What's up, bodyweight warriors, and welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk through probably one of the best progressions towards the front split, one of those drills that you can do as a beginner, but actually still has a lot of benefit even towards the more advanced stages when you're actually getting pretty close to a front split. It is just one of the most fundamental drills and something I don't see too many people doing often enough. That very simply is the long lunge. Now, the long lunge is one of those movements that it appears very simple on the surface, and it is a very simple movement, which is why it is so great, but implementing it properly and effectively is crucial to the development and its use on achieving or developing, getting towards the front split. So today I want to just talk you through some form cues, some do's and don'ts, and a couple of ways of how to implement this into your training, because if you want to get a front split, this one's a must for me. So the long lunge is an active position in which we are demonstrating our hip extension, the ability to open the hip flexor up and pull that back leg behind us. Now, if you go back to the front split, do it right video that I've done fairly recently, highly recommend you check out that video because I covered quite a bit in there, and I'm not going to repeat it here, but in essence, one of the most important factors is the front split is all about the hip flexor. It's all about developing that hip extension. Hamstring flexibility is only going to get you so far with front split training. The rest really needs to come from opening up that hip flexor, which is what this drill does so effectively. Not only does it develop length in this position, opening up that hip flexor, it also develops strength. We're going to have to be actively using the hip flexor and quads to press that rear foot down into the ground to maintain this long lunge position. You're getting strong and flexible at the same time, which is what we like to see. Now, because this is a simple movement, performing it correctly is of the highest importance. So a couple of things to consider when you're performing this drill. Number one is we really want to focus on not twisting. We want to focus on developing that hip extension with square hips. To do this, we want to think about putting that front leg back into the hip socket, and we want to really focus on engaging the glute on the back leg to push the hip and rotate it forward into this position. You can also think about this from the toes perspective on that back leg. We want to feel like we're sitting predominantly on the small toes. If we find ourselves just on the big toe hanging out twisted to the side, we know we're going to be twisted. We want to think about that weight going through the little toes of that foot. Second is we want to think about getting low and long with this position. A lot of people will go into this position without considering the primary part of this, which is that low aspect. So when they go to lift into that lunge position from, say, a passive position, you see the hips elevate. And yes, they're holding their position actively, so they're getting some of that strengthening element, but they haven't developed that hip extension further. Instead, we want to couple with that original cue of engaging the glute on the back leg, but we also want to think about pushing the heel backwards and keeping the hips low when we lift into this position. We want to keep the hips as low as we can whilst taking the feet as wide as we can. That's going to ensure we get the most hip extension out of this exercise. And finally, we want to support our upper body with our own strength. This means two things. Number one is we don't want to be excessively bent over in this position. Again, that's going to reduce the amount of hip extension we can have. That's going to reduce the stretch over the hip flexor, which is what we're trying to develop. So no folding forward. And number two, we want to make sure that we are actively lifting our chest in this position. We don't want to be supporting ourselves using our hands on our legs. That means we're not actively using the glutes and the lower back to pull ourselves and pull our torso up, which is also a key component to developing hip extension at the same time. So with those things in mind, we very simply just need to do this movement. As I seem to be reiterating a lot lately, the words of Emmett, knowing is nice, but doing is better. Spending time in this drill, doing the work really is the crucial thing. There's a couple of ways in which you can perform this one. Number one is we can perform this just statically, so just holding for time. During that time, we want to perform a yielding isometric, and what this means is that over that period of time, we're going to try and resist the movement, but ultimately gravity is going to get the best of us, and it's going to pull us longer and deeper into that position. We want to still obviously maintain and focus on those form cues, chest up, engage the glute on the little toes of the back leg, but we're looking for that depth, the length of the long lunge to get progressively deeper over that hold time. Anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds is a good place to start here. If you're struggling to get the hold times in this position, simply don't slide out as far. Work on holding a position that you can comfortably hold for that time and then gradually work on getting it deeper. Or alternatively, we can perform reps in this position. So we can hold for 3 to 5 seconds, we can come down, we can rest, and we can repeat that for like 6 to 10 repetitions. So again, when you do the maths on that, if we're holding for each time for 3 to 5 seconds, that equates to roughly 30 to 60 seconds. We're just going to be breaking it down so we can make it more manageable. Again, when doing the reps, it's really important to focus on that form cue of not letting the hips rise and focusing on the stance getting longer and opening the hip flexor further. Gradually, over time, this position will lengthen and we will get to the point where the toes will need to lift on the front leg. We begin to extend that front leg out, and essentially we're getting very, very close to what would be a full active front split position, maybe with a slight bend. I personally like performing this one as strength training, so I would do 3 to 5 sets. I'd do it 1 to 2 times per week, and I would hold for time. Alternatively, for those of us who like to do things on that daily basis, like to put in the daily grind, you can also hold this one for a daily accumulation. So you want to spend 1 to 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes per day in this position. You can see some good benefits from that, but personally, I think, as I said, 1 to 2 times a week for sets works very nicely. Now, if you are still stuck on this, then this is a drill that is very common in my front split routine that is available in my app, as well as routines for handstand strength and all other sorts of flexibility. So I'll link to that one in the description down below. If you have any questions about today's video, you want to leave a comment, maybe you have a drill that you personally prefer for developing the front split, please do so in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear what you are using to work on your front split. As always, if you just enjoyed this video, you can hit that thumbs up button and support the channel. Right next to it is that subscribe button if you don't want to miss out any more future videos. But other than that, I'll catch you in the next one. Have a strong week and peace.